Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Optics in Action, where we spotlight leaders with vision and clarity. And I am so excited to have today with us Mitchell Levy. And Mitchell is a global credibility expert. So I'm sure some of you are wondering, what is a global credibility expert? And we're going to have him define that. And we're going to talk about the why and what behind what this is. So, Mitchell, welcome to this episode of Optics in Action.
Great to be here, Ryan. Thanks for having me. Nice to have we've almost gotten together in a couple different times.
Absolutely. And I know I've seen some of your content over the past few years, and I think there's a lot of synergy in some of the things we talk about and do. So I'm really excited to have you share some of this with our audience. I always like to talk about or start with, why do you do what you do? Before we get into what credibility is and what that means, why credibility? Why did you get into this?
If I'm going to summarize an origin point, my origin story would probably have started when I was 9 and my parents got divorced. And the person who's my dad, for a long time I called him bio dad, but the person who's my dad did the helicopter thing where he tried to swoop in and be a dad. And so at that younger age, I would ask myself, what is the purpose of a father? What should a father do? And so that level of integrity and questioning integrity, that is probably the earliest I could think about spending time and energy. And it turns out integrity is two of 10 values associated with credibility, but that's really how I got to where I am now.
That's fantastic. And I think that that personal story that you've lived is, lays that foundation. And then obviously there's a business side or a business component to this as well. Why is credibility so important in the business sense as well when you think about clients and people that you might work with?
Well, I'm going to step back and say the most important that 98% of businesses and business professionals do not have is clarity.
Mm.
Because if you don't have clarity, you can't actually have credibility. Although many people will get to credibility first, but without having the clarity behind it. But let me give you the updated definition of credibility that is still not updated in the dictionary. So
So,
the dictionary will say the following: credibility is the quality in which you are trusted. Now, that was true prior to the internet, because when you were living in a small village, your credibility was, if there were two shoemakers, do you trust this person to do the job, or do you trust this other person to do the job? Very simple, right? The interesting part is, in today's world, we know the expression know, like, and trust. As
mhm.
it turns out, the expression for credibility, it's the quality in which you are trusted. That's still first: trusted, known, and liked. And so it's, I need to trust you, and there are four attributes associated with being trusted, four values. I also need to know you. In today's world, you can't be a black box service provider. You have to be somebody where I get to know who you are, the intent and commitment of who you are to do the right thing, right? And then the last piece, and this is really true, it was not true maybe 10, 20, 30 years ago. If I'm going to do business with you, I need to like you,
Yeah.
not just like you, the company, the owner, and some of the people in the company. And you're as much disliked as the one person who's done a really bad job as customer service, right? So it really is credibility. What's important? It is everything. It's the quality in which we trust, know, and like a company or an operation.
Yeah. No, I respect that. And I think that the word clarity, you've used that a couple of times. The I've built a lot of stuff around this word of optics, the concept of optics, which is sort of these two parallel definitions. One of them is the study of light, very technical stuff, the clarity of a lens, for example, in physics. And the second is the perceptions of people. And I think having clarity in both of those things, having clarity in process or having clarity in purpose, and then having a perception of clarity, having a perception of that there's trust. Trust is, there's two pieces of, if I heard you correctly, there's sort of two parts there's a 10, right? You've got 10. So, but I distill it down to sort of these two, which is there's a technical part, right? Are you credible? Do you present yourself as credible? And do I perceive you as credible? And those two things. Tell us a little bit more though about the 10 elements or the 10 aspects of credibility. I'm fascinated by this.
So what you might want to put into the show notes, I did a TEDx when I was done with the interviews. It's called "We Are Losing Our Humanity," and I'm tired of watching it happen. And in there, I actually describe you can get much more. It's a 60-minute episode and TEDx, and you can get a much better understanding of what the 10 are.
Awesome.
The thing that's fascinating, if I'm thinking about trust, it's vulnerability, integrity, authenticity, and coachability. Now, what's interesting about the word integrity is the only value that appears twice. So under your trust, it represents your external integrity. As I get to know you, do you have the intent and commitment to do the right thing? Do you have internal integrity? Right. And what's interesting is in today's world, everyone has a camera and a microphone. It is the do what I say, not what I do doesn't work in today's world. Right. So you need to have that level of integrity. And here's the cool part about the last piece in studying credibility and understanding that there are really two elements of being liked. And I'll give those away. And what we're going to do is make sure we save enough time because I'll tell you what clarity really means. What's interesting about being liked, there are two values associated with that. One, show respect. I know that sounds really simple, right? When you're having online meetings or physical meetings, it means coming early and coming prepared, coming with your heart. That's respect. The second is, I call it spreading cred dust. It's sharing the ideas, thoughts, and actions of others. If you did nothing more, if you're running a company and somebody on your team does a great job, don't take credit for it. Give them credit for it. That will bring you so much further in everybody's eyes. So anyway, that's what came out of the values. It's pretty powerful. I love it.
I love that word you just used, cred dust. I think that's insightful. I'm going to be reflecting on that for sure. So tell us a little bit more about clarity. Tell us more about your definition and what you've learned about that, where you're going with that.
So we'll do a little bit of structure for a second. I have a framework that allows any business or any individual to articulate their credibility, articulate who they are in less than 10 words. And so clarity is the opportunity to be able to do so many things. Clarity is the opportunity for you to have a compass. When opportunities come your way, do you say yes or no? Well, the decision should be made based on your North Star, based on your compass. That is something that is less than 10 words. When people go to recommend you, when they have friends that are perfect prospects for you, do they think about you or not? Well, if you've done a good job of clearly giving them who you serve and why, the answer will be yes. 98% of you don't.
Yeah.
Right. So what happens is if you are a credible company, if you are a credible human, you are a servant leader. You are a service to others. So I'm going to ask you the next question, and this comes way before why. Who do you serve? And either what is the pain point they perceive as what they're running into, or what is the pleasure point that they want to achieve? That is what I call a CPOP, your customer point of possibilities. And if you could articulate in less than 10 words, and so there's a bunch of things that I do to help companies get their CPOPs. And you and I were talking offline. I do executive coaching with the same client base you work on. And the first thing I do with anyone I talk to is I'm listening, and this is where it gets fun. I'm listening for the playground they play in.
Yeah.
Right. And what happens with most people is instead of living and playing in their playground where they have a very consistent alignment. By the way, if you want employee engagement, come up with a CPOP, share it with your company, have a playground that you play in, and it allows your employees to know how they should play in the playground. It's not easy, very simple. What happens is we've taught all these marketing cookie cutter approaches to how to do things. And when we do that, and you listen to a CEO of a $10 million company, we do this and we do that, we do this, we that. When you're trying to figure out, well, what playground is this person in? And they're all over the place because they can. And the answer is they can, but they shouldn't.
Right.
Right? With a certain level of clarity, it becomes so much easier for you to manage, for you to lead, so much easier for your people to follow and to lead their areas that they're responsible for.
Yeah. So you've got me intrigued. So in the world that we live in, right, there's so much content being generated by AI, by ChatGPT, and by all these things. So as I think about distilling it down to 10 words is an incredible amount of focus and clarity. And maybe you don't want to give it away on the podcast here, but what are some things you do to help people take all of these ideas? Because a lot of founders do. We are all over the place. You got so many ideas, you're going to change the world. How do you take all of that and distill it down to 10 words? You've got me.
By the way, I did, let me reinforce what I said because it really, I'm happy to give it away. Here's the formula. It's really is as simple. Now, the reason I'm happy to give it away is I will give you the formula and I could tell you with 100% certainty that 98% of people who apply this formula will incorporate marketing cookie cutter stuff. And that's just from the research I've done. So I'm happy to share. And if you're in the 2%, oh my God, that's amazing. I absolutely need to meet you. If you want to get help getting there, I'm also happy to talk to you or take advantage of one of our programs that we have out there. So it comes down to two pieces. So if you think about what I call a CPOP, your customer point of possibilities, it is the who do you serve?
Mm-hmm.
And when you talk about the who you serve, it is not 5, 10, 15 words. It's 1 to 3 words, right? It's as small of an audience as, and I'll give you 2 CPOPs that you could think about, right? It's as small of an audience as you could possibly put, wrap your arms around. And we've been taught wrong. We've been taught that the bigger the fishing line we could cast, the more people will catch. And that's the opposite is true. The more narrow, the closer you can have your optics, the more narrow you can have clarity, the easier it is for somebody to relate to you, or more importantly, if they're a referral partner, for them to know that this is somebody they need to refer to you. So it's the who, and then it's the what.
Okay.
So a CPOP is the who and the what. Who do you serve? And what is either their pain point or pleasure point?
Mm-hmm.
And that's 10 words or less. So let me give you 2. One of my students has a fun one. Hers is 5 words long. Successful women living with regret. See, you don't need to say more than that. If you've heard this, you're either one yourself or you know someone. And now within that playground that she plays in, she would do the next 30 to 60 seconds. And for her, it's simply, and this is what I call the tell me more. For her, it's, hey, this was me. I was married, had a kid, had a house, have a job, everything looked great, and I was miserable. Once I figured out how to address that for myself, I then applied that to 250 other successful women, and this is the place I love supporting other people. What was that, 30 seconds? You're like, wait, I know, I want to recommend her, right?
That's incredibly powerful and incredibly precise. And I think one of the beautiful things about that is it doesn't just open the door to like, well, I help anybody who has a problem. It's, hey, it was a very focused, it gave me a very clear picture of who's in scope for her, who's out of scope for her. And that's it.
Ryan, this is really cool. So let's say you're listening. By the way, this is no intent, right? So let's say you're listening, you go, I need that. I got a lot of regret. You're going to call up Katrin and say, hey, Katrin, I'm a guy. I am successful. Can you help me? She now has a choice.
Yeah.
right? Now let me do mine so you could hear it because it's a different one, right? And the reason I focused on this, so my executive coaching is CEOs 10 to 100 million. The reason I focused on this particular is the audience needs me more than anyone else I know of. Of all audiences in the world, actually there are two because they're desperately in need of ROI and support. Realtors are one, but that's not a place I want to play. And so my CPOP coaches who've created a job, not a business.
Mm.
So let me tell you, I'll do the tell me more. You know what's interesting? There are so many certification organizations that teach coaches how to actually transform their clients, how to transform a company or an individual and bring them from the A to B. And let's just assume they're really good at that. And many I've met, they really are. I'm going to tell you what they suck at: business development and actually running a business where there's a continual stream of referral sources and a continual stream of clients coming in the door. So that they wake up in the morning and they're actually enjoying their business versus doing the next job thing. We have a done with you program that supports that. So what happens when you frame the playground you play in? Mine was 8 words, Katrin's was 5 words. When I say tell me more, you're now listening for, well, how do they play in the playground? So you already have incremental credibility because I'm answering within a level of clarity that most people don't have.
Yeah. Yeah, wow. I'm sure there's folks in our audience you've got thinking about these things as well. And my brain is just spinning, right? The gears are spinning as I think about the clarity of what I think that I am, but the clarity of what I may portray to the world and how do people perceive that. So that's being able to distill it down to less than 10 words would be for me incredibly powerful to think in those terms, because I could see that journey in both of those stories that you just laid out.
And we'll take, because of you're keeping your time, we'll take that to the side. What I will tell you is, unless you're in the 2%, you may be 98% of people, they're just not going to get the clarity done, even with the formula at hand, because you have to forget all the marketing BS you've been taught. And you have to focus on who you are as a credible person, who you are as a servant of others. And you need to think to yourself, okay, who is the audience I serve, and what do they perceive as their pain point or pleasure point? And when you do that and you live in that framework, what's fascinating, it becomes so much easier for you not just to showcase that that's the place you plan, but also to be perceived by others, because your actions, you not only say something, but your actions reflect what you're saying, and therefore the perceptions of who you are and what you do are in alignment. That level of alignment, that level of clarity brings you significant credibility.
Yeah, I can definitely see the path of how that increases credibility through that process. So I'm someone, processes in my brain are always thinking about how do you connect all these things? How does it all work together? And I think what you just laid out is a very clear, I could see the stepping stones of how that
Nice.
increases credibility internally within an organization, as well as externally in communication to clients and external parties. So absolutely fascinating stuff. Well, hey, I appreciate you coming on this episode, Mitchell. And it sounds like you've got so much more to offer our audience and me for sure as well. When you think about, those types of things, how do people find out more about you? How do they learn more about the CPOP and the credibility, expertise, and clarity?
Oh,
How do
thank
they
you.
contact you and learn more?
The easiest, I mean, if you're on LinkedIn all the time, you can get to me there. The easiest is going to my website, mitchelllevy.com. So mitchelllevy.com. And from there, we list all the different programs and opportunities and things that we're focused on. And listen, if you heard something here and it was intriguing enough and you need to get on my calendar, go to mitchelllevy.com, right? If you want to see the programs, you're like, oh man, I need clarity. We do a public clarity session once a month. When's the next one? Right? There is one thing that's fun. I did something recently. Ryan, you should definitely come to one of these. I opened up a new product called the referral. It's referralnetworkclub.com. It is a one-time meeting once a month where you get to meet up to 6 people and share your CPOP and tell me more twice. So it's an opportunity where outside experts or outside people who you're meeting, you get to see if the words that you say are impacting them. And it's $20, right? It has to be slightly more than zero so that you really think it's important. And it's 1 hour a month. So anyhow, I'm just playing with different tools and approaches to allow people to really show up as themselves and throw away the marketing stuff that they've been taught to live by.
Yeah. Well, I think in this world where we're inundated with marketing and we're inundated with information, more information than we could possibly process, the clarity that you're helping individuals and teams and groups of people with seems to be incredibly powerful. And I think it's something that all of us need in our lives. So thank you again, Mitchell, for being on this episode of Optics in Action. We appreciate your time.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Brian. Nice to get to see you this way.
My pleasure.